So when I was in the hospital, one of the clinical criteria of symptoms of schizophrenia that I had was hearing voices, and also hearing aggressive voices and negative voices. And I was really taught to see myself as somehow broken, or there was something wrong with me, or that somehow these voices were bad, or that they were the sign of like an illness or a malfunctioning machinery in my brain. But then several months after I was out of the hospital, I remember I was in a studio apartment in San Francisco living all alone. I was really suffering. I was very isolated. I was very frightened. I would spend days and days and days without ever leaving my apartment. Sometimes I would just go down to the corner store to get a little bit of something to eat, and I would come back. I was so terrified. And I remember there was one day, and all this time living in San Francisco and being alone, I had kind of heard about this thing, yoga, and I kind of knew about it, and I kind of knew that I needed to kind of maybe do something with my body, but I could never really do it. I could never really get myself to start. And so I remember there was this time that I was really suffering a lot in San Francisco, and I was on the floor of my bathroom in this apartment, and I had been crying and crying and crying. I was just torn to pieces, going through a lot of real pain, a lot of fear. And I remember at that moment, I heard this voice. It was a very loud, angry voice, and it said, "Will, you are going to die if you don't do yoga." And that's how I started doing yoga. That is what inspired me to find a yoga center, the Yoga School of San Francisco, and I went to them and I was able to talk with the director, and they gave me a discount, and I started my first class. And slowly with that support, I started going back, and then I slowly started to reconnect with my body. And that was one of many ingredients in the whole recipe of my recovery. And I think that it was also a big lesson for me that all the different things that were happening to me that were called psychosis, like hearing voices, maybe they actually had a purpose. Maybe they actually had a meaning. Maybe that aggressive voice was more like an angry parent or an angry teacher that really had my own best interest, because it did tell me that I needed to do yoga. I mean, it threatened to kill me. It was an angry, negative voice, but it was the thing that inspired me. So one of the things that helps me in my work now, in my life, and sustaining myself now, is really believing that whatever's happening inside of me or whatever's happening in the world, that there is some meaning, there is some purpose, and if I can just step back from it a little bit and take a breath and be curious and open and search for the message, that maybe like that voice that I heard in my apartment, it can be a teaching that's trying to help me.